You've spent the last 2 weeks as a group discussing what everyday evangelism really looks like. This week, we'll take a look at the practical things that you can do and the ways that your group can help in order to make everyday evangelism a regular part of your daily life. But before we discuss the who and the what, let's first discuss the why. See, Jesus told his followers, "I have come that they may have life and have it to the full." And your own story is evidence of what a better life through Jesus looks like. It's not a perfect life, but it is better than the life on your own without him. If we really believe that following Jesus will make a person's life better and make him or her better at life, why wouldn't we want to share it with someone we know? In the past 2 weeks, perhaps a person or a couple has come to mind. Maybe 2 or 3 people in your circles of influence, or maybe you've struggled to consider someone you know who doesn't know Jesus. Everyday evangelism isn't about making the people around you projects, but rather making intentional investments with those in your current or potential circles of influence. See, we believe every follower of Jesus should have one unchurched or non-Christian person who they're intentionally and consistently investing in. To help you identify your one, consider this. This circle represents you. These other circles represent places where you frequently interact with others. For you, it might be the gym you go to, or maybe it's your workplace. See, a lot of times we don't realize how many relationships we interact with on a regular basis. It might be that the best circle for you is to think about your neighborhood. Or if you're a parent, you might find yourself on the sidelines of a lot of sports games. Whatever circle jumps out at you, the goal is to consider each of these circles of influence that surround you and seek to identify one unchurched person. You may find that the circles around you all include people who know Jesus. If so, consider potential circles where you pursue relationships with someone who is currently unchurched. It can be easy to complete a study like this and intend to do something and then never actually follow through on those intentions. That's why we encourage you to take this next step together as a group. Your group can help determine your best next steps and then act as an encouragement to help you prioritize your plans. As followers of Christ, we have been entrusted with communicating Jesus in a way that makes someone who is outside the faith want to take steps towards following Jesus, whether they know it or not. As you heard in the previous weeks, when we take the time to build trust with someone, we make it easier for them to move towards a relationship with Jesus. With that in mind, we want you to pick a person or a couple of people to intentionally invest in. People in your circles of influence that with God's help, you could move towards faith in Jesus. Here are some examples. Let's say you have a neighbor that you are pretty sure isn't even through threshold 1 yet. It might be good for you to consider going over and starting up a conversation with them whenever you see them out in their yard. Or maybe there's a coworker that you think is at threshold 2 and they are only curious about faith. Consider inviting them to lunch just to get to know them better. Or you might know a couple stuck at threshold 4. They're seeking after God, but they're not willing to trust him fully. You know they're seeking because they willingly bring up the topic of God and they ask questions. Consider inviting them to church and discussing their questions with more intentionality. This has looked different for me over the years. Working on staff at a church or even telling people that you go to a church can instantly get you put into a "I shouldn't swear around them from now on" box. But the last thing that I want is anyone to feel like they have to act differently around me. Now, as I've shared previously, I have gotten this very wrong in the past. But as I have applied what we have discussed and considered in the 5 thresholds, I've noticed that I feel different in situations where I talk about my faith. And I've noticed one other thing as well. It's actually more effective. Getting to know people, listening to them, and showing genuine care for them actually builds a relationship. And once a relationship is built and someone sees that you care about them and are actually for them, then when the time comes for you to invite them to church, it doesn't come across like you're a salesperson. It feels like you're a friend who is sharing something that you love and has impacted your life, and you'd like them to experience it with you. See, my wife and I just moved into a new neighborhood, and when meeting our neighbors, one of them shared that they were out of work and they'd been looking for something for a while. So my wife and I began looking for opportunities and for people that we knew that were hiring, and we've been sending them our neighbor's way. Now, it doesn't sound like much, and most people don't think that that's evangelism, but that's exactly what it is. We're trying to be intentional about communicating a love and a concern that will hopefully make it easier for our neighbor to move towards God. So what about you? Who has come to mind for you? See, as a group, we want you to discuss these following 3 questions. Who is your one? What will you do? And how can this group help? Now, it may sound odd to ask how your group can help, as it's unlikely that your group knows the person who came to your mind. But your group can play a key part in putting this into practice. As a group, prioritize time in the coming weeks to pray specifically for the people you've identified. Pray that God would open the door to conversations at just the right time. You may even consider placing an empty chair at your group meetings as a visible reminder to be praying for those around you who don't yet know Jesus. Remember, the goal isn't to make people a project, but rather to help others that we care about see the better life that Jesus makes available. As you and your group begin to think about a person or two that each of you can intentionally invest in, I want you to remember this. For thousands of years, God has been using people, flawed people, who have very good reasons as to why God should pick someone else to use. He's been using these flawed people like you and me to keep the church alive and growing. We haven't been tasked with saving everyone. We have simply been asked to invest in someone. All over the world, this way of investing has been the very thing that has kept the message of Jesus Christ alive for centuries. And it's the very thing that God has chosen to use to impact those in our community as well. If every one of us makes investing in someone a priority, consider the difference that could make.